Spongebob trying to hide a body, to evil clones. For most people thinking it's a kid's show, SpongeBob has some pretty messed up episodes. So today, we're gonna go over the 10 darkest ones to see how dark the show can really get. Starting with the graveyard shift. The episode starts at the Krusty Krab, where SpongeBob and Squidward are tasked with taking the night shift, which SpongeBob, for some reason, thinks is the most fun thing in the world, because it means he can work more. After a few hours of goofing around in the night shift, it starts to get really dark outside, and Squidward asks SpongeBob to take out the trash, which might not have been a very good idea. Yeah, clearly SpongeBob doesn't handle Sphere of the Dark well, which is not good, because Squidward sees this and wants to get his revenge on SpongeBob for being annoying all night long. So he tells him a very detailed, scary story about a man named the Hash-Slinging Slasher. He has a spatula for an arm, and every Tuesday night, he lurks outside. You know he's coming because first the lights will flicker, then the phone starts ringing, and then after that, a guy will arrive off a bus, and finally, he gets you. But what started as an obviously made-up story quickly turns into a nightmare for both of them, because later in the night shift, out of nowhere, the lights start actually flickering. And then, shortly after, the phone rings, and nobody picks up. Squidward starts getting terrified as his own scary story starts coming to life. But then, to put icing on the cake, a bus comes, and a random guy hops off of it. And if it couldn't get any worse, he reveals he has a spatula for an arm. The Hash-Slinging Slasher is actually real, and he makes his way busting into the Krusty Krab to get SpongeBob and Squidward.
Can I have a job application? I brought my own spatula.
Yeah, it turns out that this was just some random dude, and everything that happened that night was just a pure coincidence. But there's still one thing that's not adding up.
Wait! If that was you on the phone and you on the bus, then who was flickering the lights?
Yeah, this episode was really unsettling, especially with that ending. But these episodes are only gonna get darker as the video goes on. Coming in at number 9, we have One Course Meal. The episode starts with Plankton, as usual, trying to steal the secret formula. But this time, he actually gets pretty close, and gets Mr. Krabs and SpongeBob held captive in an elaborate machine. It seems like all hope is lost, until Mr. Krabs' daughter Pearl randomly walks in, and it turns out Plankton has a crippling fear of whales.
Stay back, whale! I'm privy to what you do to organisms like me. I've seen those documentaries.
So after Plankton runs away like a little baby, Mr. Krabs gets a very messed up idea to get back at Plankton. But instead of just using this newfound knowledge as a quick scare tactic, or maybe a one-time prank, Mr. Krabs decides to mentally destroy him. Back at the Chum Bucket, Plankton explains that why he has such a big fear of whales is because one took out his entire family. But then Pearl barges into the Krusty Krab and scares the ever-living heck out of Plankton. But it turns out this was actually just Mr. Krabs dressed up as Pearl. This all causes Plankton to lose sleep, and my boy Plankton does not look good. After many more sleepless nights, and literal nightmares about Pearl eating him, Plankton is so tormented by these constant fear attacks that he straight up tries to unalive himself by laying in the road and waiting for a car to run him over. Meanwhile, Mr. Krabs is celebrating this in his office. This is a children's cartoon with a TVY7 rating. Having references to psychological torture and unaliving yourself in the same episode is dark, but it's only gonna get darker, because coming in at number 8, we have the planet of the jellyfish, which starts just like a typical day, with SpongeBob and Patrick going jellyfishing. But it isn't until SpongeBob goes up to a suspiciously scary looking cave that's where things start to take a turn, and then a creature appears in the background, not doing anything, just watching. It eats a jellyfish and starts a jellyfish apocalypse around Bikini Bottom. And the apocalypse really starts when a jellyfish latches onto Patrick and creates an identical evil clone. For some reason, when SpongeBob goes up to him, it's not like evil Patrick tries to lash out or attack him or anything, but that might actually be because he has bigger plans in mind.
Yes, I too have caught many jellyfish, Perhaps we should give one to each of our friends.
Well, we've given everyone a jellyfish except Squidward. He probably doesn't want one.
But Evil Patrick insists and makes sure that Squidward gets his jellyfish. And then, what do you know? An evil Squidward comes right out of the house. But for some reason, he also doesn't want to possess or kill Spongebob. So what is going on? Spongebob goes and tries to get some sleep, but right as he lays in his bed, he gets up so the jellyfish can't do anything. And then he goes to the couch where he manages to somehow accidentally choke out the jellyfish and prevent himself from getting cloned. But it doesn't stop them from getting my boy Gary, turning him into a pot creature freak. Meanwhile, at the Krusty Krab, how far the jellyfish infection went really shows, as we see literally everyone besides a random customer getting possessed. And it's not like they attack him, they just kind of hiss at the customer, which I guess means that only the jellyfish can infect people. SpongeBob makes his way to the freezer to get some mayonnaise, and what happened to lay behind those boxes.
Is somebody in there? Monsters!
And this is where SpongeBob finally realizes that something is wrong. So he navigates himself back through the Krusty Krab, nearly avoiding all of the possessed versions of SpongeBob characters. This is until he gets dragged into Sandy's dome, who is the only survivor of this whole apocalypse besides SpongeBob. And in the dome, after talking for a little bit, they find out that the only way to stop the jellyfish people is with mayonnaise, because earlier Patrick mentioned that he didn't like it.
No mayonnaise!
They don't have any mayo in the tree dome, but thankfully they have some glasses so they can blend in. Well, they make their way over to the Krusty Krab to grab some mayo and stop this apocalypse once and for all. And it looks like their disguises are actually working. But this is until SpongeBob knocks the glasses off like an idiot. So SpongeBob quickly grabs the mayonnaise in a last-ditch effort and starts squirting the aliens with it, which for some reason actually works. And they evaporate into green goo. And when they do this, their real-life counterpart comes back to life. So he squirts everyone, and one by one, they all go back to normal. But this is until we realize that the giant alien is still alive. And when SpongeBob tries to use mayo on it, it freezes before it can hit him because it's too cold in the freezer. But thankfully, Sandy has a big brain, so she turns up the heat, melting the mayo and saving the day, exploding the alien into a bunch of green slime. While Patrick's busy eating all that green slime, let's move on to the 7th darkest episode of the show, Rock Bottom, which starts with SpongeBob and Patrick leaving Glove World. They get on a bus, but while leaving, Patrick notices that they pass a sign that says leaving Bikini Bottom. And just before SpongeBob even gets a chance to look out the window and see what's going on, they shoot straight down a cliff, getting dropped into a town called Rock Bottom. And right away, this place gets really weird. We see a bunch of creatures that aren't like anything we've ever seen before. Something about these creatures are just otherworldly. Something I feel like we would never even see in the same waters as Bikini Bottom. But I mean, I guess this does make sense because we are way deeper in the ocean. But anyway, SpongeBob goes out and tries to see the bus schedule. But right as SpongeBob walks away for like 2 seconds, he misses the bus and Patrick and him end up getting separated. SpongeBob is all alone in Rock Bottom. So now, SpongeBob has no other choice but to sit there in the dark waiting for the next bus to come by. But SpongeBob is clearly not locked in because he gets distracted for literally like 10 seconds tying his shoe. And while he's doing this, the bus just flies by, not even giving him a chance to react. After missing the bus a few more times, SpongeBob starts to get hungry, so he goes to check out the local vending machine. It literally just feels like they're teasing him at this point. This has gotta be some sort of mental torture. SpongeBob then goes to the office to complain about this, and after waiting in line, it turns out that there are no more buses going to Bikini Bottom till the morning. But this is where the episode starts to get really creepy, because they shut down the office and turn all the lights off. Imagine being all alone in a new town, surrounded by a bunch of foreign fish people you can barely understand. I would hate to be SpongeBob in this situation.
Just gotta keep sprinting! Sitting, bleeding. Hey, who's there?
And right after he gets cornered, turns out it's just the guy who found his balloon from earlier. And he actually turns out to be pretty chill. And he's even kind enough to blow up the balloon to help SpongeBob gracefully float back home. If it took SpongeBob a whole day to escape, it would probably take Patrick a month. But while this episode may have been dark for its unsettling premise and creepy atmosphere, this next episode is dark for a reason you would never expect. Coming in at number 6, we have Earworm. This episode starts with SpongeBob listening to his favorite song, the musical Doodle, while working at the Krusty Krab.
Round and round the record spins all day. Listen again, it takes you far away. Trying to stop it is futile, so just listen now to my musical doodle.
Though, through this episode, SpongeBob just keeps listening to the same song. It's like he can't get enough of it, which is weird because SpongeBob usually has the attention span of a goldfish. He goes flying home from the Krusty Krab to listen to the musical Doodle, until he finds a record shop in town also playing the musical Doodle. So of course, he goes in and he has to buy it. He keeps going around and keeps playing the song, but not even Gary likes it. Later that day, SpongeBob tries to go to bed, but he quite literally cannot get this song out of his head. So he goes into the living room to listen to it just one more time. But the next day, something isn't right. When SpongeBob goes to work, it looks like he's sleep deprived. Most likely because he's been listening to the musical Doodle all night, and he didn't get any sleep. But something is different.
SpongeBob, wake up, boyo!
The song at this point is completely controlling SpongeBob. It's like he's not even in control of his own body anymore. So SpongeBob decides that he doesn't want to keep fighting it, and just embraces the musical Doodle, which at first might seem like it's working. But then he goes around and starts messing up things with his job, like accidentally giving a customer onions on their patty to a customer that didn't want onion, giving patties to the wrong customers, spitting on people, and just straight up annoying people with his singing. But after Mr. Krabs senses that he's losing money, he confronts SpongeBob and tells him that he has to stop singing. But SpongeBob just can't do it. So he goes back into the kitchen and he's struggling. He literally can't stop singing the song. And he starts going insane. He wrecks the whole kitchen and he is looking as creepy as ever, still singing the musical Doodle.
That you ran from is back again. You wonder if the madness will ever end.
Something is wrong. This isn't just him liking the song anymore. There is something deeper. The gang breaks into his house and they find him clung to the ceiling like a cockroach. They tie him up and then find out the truth. SpongeBob was suffering from a condition known as earworm, which when your brain gets stuck on a catchy tune, you can attract an earworm infection. And SpongeBob has a nasty one living in there, so they start singing SpongeBob a bunch of catchy tunes. Mr. Krabs tries an old sea shanty, but that doesn't work. Sandy tries playing a western song, but that doesn't satisfy the earworm either. But then Squidward decides to start playing his clarinet. And it's so bad that the earworm just leaves because of how trash it is. But later that night when Squidward goes to bed, the earworm crawls in his head and makes Squidward sing to his own clarinet.
Oh yeah, that's catchy stuff, Squiddy.
Something about the thought of a worm crawling into your head and making you addicted to a song that's out of your control is terrifying. But these episodes are only gonna get more terrifying, because now we're on to the top 5. Starting with the episode A Pal for Gary. And this episode personally had me terrified as a kid. It starts like any normal day, with SpongeBob feeding Gary. SpongeBob goes off to work, but poor Gary just wants to go for a walk, which makes Gary really sad. But it turns out he was just guilt-tripping SpongeBob, because when he leaves, he uses the leash to grab a bunch of stuff and starts watching a cowboy show. So it turns out bro is actually completely fine, but SpongeBob at work starts to get worried and feels bad for Gary. So he calls him for some reason, which just makes SpongeBob feel even worse.
Too distraught to even answer the phone. Hello, you've reached SpongeBob and... Come on, Gary. Meow. Gary. Ah! The two of us are having too much fun together to answer the phone right now. So leave a message and we'll call you right back if we ever get a break from having so much fun together.
So after getting off work, SpongeBob tries to find a solution to balance his responsibilities at the Krusty Krab, while also being a good pet owner to Gary. But when he's walking home, he finds a stand selling pets, which gives SpongeBob the idea to get a friend for Gary. The lady selling them tried to warn him that this isn't just any normal pet, but SpongeBob has negative brain cells, so he didn't exactly pick up on that. Back at home, and this thing is already acting really weird. He names this pet Puffy Fluffy, and lets him near Gary, but he nearly kills Gary any chance he gets when SpongeBob isn't looking. But as soon as SpongeBob gets involved, he goes back to looking completely innocent like nothing ever happened. Things only get worse when SpongeBob puts them in bed together, which is probably the worst thing he could have done. SpongeBob still doesn't understand, so he brings Gary back downstairs to Puffy Fluffy, who seems to be sleeping nice and cute in a little ball. But when SpongeBob leaves, it turns out this isn't Puffy Fluffy, but it's actually a ball of his own shed skin. And when Gary goes back into the kitchen, he finds that Puffy Fluffy evolved into a giant monster that is in the kitchen looking for anything to feed its appetite. And this thing is horrifying. Meanwhile, SpongeBob is still sleeping, so Gary is left by himself to fend off the giant monster. Meanwhile, Puffy Fluffy starts destroying the entire house, so Gary goes up and tries to fight back, but he's just too weak, and he can't do anything to defeat the giant monster. After a chase throughout the whole house, over the entire night, SpongeBob finally wakes up and sees the entire house destroyed.
Wow, my library! Oh, and my prized memoirs of T.S. Halibut.
SpongeBob barges in at the perfect moment and sees that Puffy Fluffy is about to kill Gary. But SpongeBob has to be the stupidest person in Bikini Bottom, because somehow he thinks that Gary is holding Puffy Fluffy hostage.
You put Fluffy down right now. Bad boy Gary. Bad boy. Bad Gary. Bad.
Puffy Fluffy starts trying to eat SpongeBob, but then Gary goes cowboy mode and actually screws up Puffy Fluffy, getting him to leave town. From now on, SpongeBob realizes that it's not right to leave Gary home alone, so the next day, he brings him into work. The giant monster in this episode is absolutely horrifying, and had me shivering in a dark corner as a kid, and this will always be one of the scariest SpongeBob episodes in my opinion. But another episode that scared the absolute life out of me was number 4 on this list, Krabby Patty Creature Feature. The episode starts with SpongeBob making some Krabby Patties like usual, but then Mr. Krabs hands out some patties to customers. They seem to not want the Krabby Patties, and it turns out they're getting sick of eating the same thing over and over again. They want something new. So after Mr. Krabs learns that they want something different, he takes SpongeBob to the secret basement of the Krusty Krab, where Sandy makes a new Krabby Patty. But SpongeBob thinks this isn't right, and doesn't want to change the Krabby Patty secret formula, although Mr. Krabs doesn't care, and just wants more money, so he gives out the new and improved patties, which everyone seems to love at first. This is until Mr. Krabs starts acting weird, and turns into a full-on Krabby Patty monster, literally becoming a Krabby Patty. And it's not just Mr. Krabs, because Sandy turns into one too, and so does everyone else in the Krusty Krab, so SpongeBob rushes out of there knowing something's wrong. Meanwhile, the Krabby Patty monsters start running around the town infecting everyone, making random civilians eat them, and by eating them, it also turns them into Krabby Patty monsters. From Bubble Bass to random kids, everyone in town is now a Krabby Patty, except for SpongeBob, who knew the whole time that they never should have changed the recipe. SpongeBob escapes the Krusty Krab and tries to hide in a dumpster till this all blows over, but it's not gonna be that easy, as all him waiting does is get the town destroyed even more. Eventually, in a stroke of luck, one of the only 3 people not affected, Perch Perkins, comes up to SpongeBob and interviews him on the news. But right as he gets taken out by a Krabby Patty monster, he reveals who the only other unaffected person is.
Take a bite!
Who's the third person not affected?
So SpongeBob bolts over to the chum bucket and barricades himself inside. And he tells Plankton everything that happened, but it might be too late, because they bust in and grab Plankton, and even infect Karen. Now, SpongeBob is literally the only person not infected, so he climbs up the chum and accidentally breaks open a little, which causes Patrick to throw up because of how bad the chum is, which makes the orange Krabby Patty goo get out of his body. And he turns back to normal, so now SpongeBob realizes chum is the cure, so he feeds everyone chum and turns everyone back to normal. A Krabby Patty zombie apocalypse forcing them to eat each other is pretty dark, but so is number 3 on this list, Spongehenge. The episode starts with a bag of leftovers floating into SpongeBob's house because of the extreme winds that were happening in Bikini Bottom. So he goes to check it out, and his sponge holes start whistling because of the wind.
My pores are whistling in the wind.
So he keeps going around playing with the wind until the sun takes over the moon's shift. So now SpongeBob has to go to work at the Krusty Krab, and he's about to be late, but the wind is so extreme that he can barely move, and the jellyfish outside aren't letting him leave. So no matter what SpongeBob does, he can't seem to get to work. So eventually, SpongeBob uses the phone and calls Mr. Krabs for some help, and thankfully, Mr. Krabs has a fishing rod for this exact scenario where SpongeBob can't get to work. So he uses it to reel SpongeBob all the way to the Krusty Krab. At work, the wind is so strong that it affects his Krabby Patties. SpongeBob finds his way around it, but what SpongeBob can't find his way around is the fact that the wind is still making his sponge holes play music, which keeps attracting the jellyfish. The winds blow even stronger and completely blow down the Krusty Krab, causing SpongeBob to blow right into Patrick's house for some cover. While he's there, he explains to Patrick that the winds keep making his sponge holes play a tune the jellyfish like. But it's too late, because the wind blows, knocking his rock open, and the jellyfish takes SpongeBob captive.
Hey, pal. Oh! SpongeBob! Get out of here! I'm sorry, SpongeBob, but you've become a negative influence!
So then, SpongeBob runs off to a cave where there's finally no wind, but it starts to get too scary for him. So to keep him company, he spends years chiseling out a stone replica of himself, and then SpongeBob starts to go completely insane, talking to this stone figure like it's real. But then he realizes it also has holes just like SpongeBob that might attract the jellyfish. So he puts the stone figure out, hoping it'll distract them, but it turns out that didn't do anything, because the music was way out of tune. So SpongeBob starts plotting and figures out that if he makes a bunch of these stone figures in different sizes, then surely one of them has to attract the jellyfish. And something about these things are horrifying. But the jellyfish seem to love it, so SpongeBob can finally go back to work. But there's a slight problem. It turns out he was in the cave for so long that the Krusty Krab is no more. This episode was really dark, but it doesn't even compare to this next one on the list. Coming in at number 2, we have SB-129, which already sounds weird just from the title. The episode starts with SpongeBob and Patrick annoying Squidward and begging him to go jellyfishing with them. But of course, Squidward isn't about that life. He just wants some peace and quiet to play his clarinet. When he finds out that the Krusty Krab is closed for the day, he gets an idea to sneak over there, lock the doors, and finally be left alone to play his clarinet. But things then start to go sideways really fast. When SpongeBob and Patrick start snooping around outside the Krusty Krab looking for him, Squidward panics and hides inside a freezer. And this might have been the single worst decision he's ever made, because he gets frozen solid for 2,000 years. When he finally thaws out, he walks inside the Krusty Krab, but everything is in the future. The walls are chrome, the air is empty, and the only person around is this weird robotic version of SpongeBob named Spongetron. Spongetron shows him around, and Squidward notices that everything is chrome, and SpongeBob just casually has clones, who still want to go jellyfishing. Eventually, Squidward gets sick of being there, so SpongeBob suggests he uses the time machine to go back home.
Well, if SpongeBob exists in the future, I'd better go to the past.
But Squidward accidentally goes way too far into the past, back till way before his time period. And now he's just trapped in a weird prehistoric time in the ocean. But eventually he makes his way around the creepy forest and finds caveman SpongeBob and Patrick, who are just as dumb as usual, if not even dumber. But they seem to be friendly, so Squidward decides that this is his perfect spot to play the clarinet. So he goes off a little bit, but he keeps hearing them screaming. And that's because they're playing with a jellyfish and stinging themselves. So Squidward teaches them how to properly jellyfish, and then goes back off to play his clarinet. When he finally goes off to do that, caveman SpongeBob and Patrick hear his awful music and get really mad. So they start chasing after him and wanting to kill him. So he goes back to the time machine and accidentally breaks it, which teleports him into nothingness. It's just an empty white room. Squidward thinks that this is the perfect quiet spot to play his clarinet, but then then he starts to realize that he's alone, which makes him panic. So he tries to find a way out. And it's not until he says that he misses SpongeBob that everything goes back to normal.
SpongeBob! Patrick!
Hi,
Squidward. Oh, I'm back. I can't believe this. I was in space, and I went to the future, and then I went to the past, and then I was nowhere. But now I'm back.
This episode was horrifying. Like, imagine being trapped in nothingness. But before we get to number 1 on this list, I want to give a quick honorable mention to the episode that scared me the most as a kid. I had an accident, aka the gorilla episode. And honestly, nothing about this episode is really that scary or dark to me now, with the gorilla being very obviously CG'd in, but as a kid, I didn't notice that. And it terrified me. From him beating up Patrick and Sandy in a bag, to the gorilla literally ripping SpongeBob in half, I can see why it scared me as a kid. But also, the fact it makes no sense and has weird visuals really puts the creepiness over the top for me.
You know what I don't understand, though? What? What's a gorilla doing underwater in the first place?
Well, it's funny you should. I mean, George, they're onto us!
This episode was so scary to me that whenever it came on TV, I would literally cry and refuse to watch it. But now that we got that out of the way, let's talk about the actual darkest episode of the show. Coming in at number 1, we have The Nasty Patty. And this is by far the darkest SpongeBob episode. The episode starts with the health inspector coming to the Krusty Krab. So SpongeBob and Mr. Krabs give him a whole feast to satisfy him, so they can pass the Krusty Krab health inspection. But after everything seems good, the news comes on saying that there's been a fake health inspector going around town trying to get free food. And when they find this out, they are obviously not happy. Mr. Krabs and SpongeBob want revenge for this guy getting all that free food, so they decide to make a really disgusting Krabby Patty to get back fake health inspector. To make this abomination, they do things like putting hot sauce on it, dipping it in the toilet, rubbing it with Mr. Krabs' gym socks, and probably a whole other list of OSHA violations just to make it this disgusting.
Why, that's the most diabolical Krabby Patty ever spawned.
I call it the Nasty Patty.
Mr. Krabs and SpongeBob give him the Krabby Patty, and although they thought it was a funny and lighthearted prank, they could have never expected what was coming next. When the health inspector is about to take a bite, a fly goes into his mouth and he starts choking on it, leading to a really disturbing scene where the health inspector is literally dying, and SpongeBob and Mr. Krabs are in the kitchen laughing at the pain he's in, not knowing it was too late, and he was actually dead. And to make it even worse, the news came on showing that the fake health inspector was caught, meaning that SpongeBob and Mr. Krabs were now left alone with an unalive body of the real health inspector in their restaurant. Not wanting to take responsibility for their actions, Mr. Krabs decides that the only logical thing to do is to bury the body far, far away so that nobody finds out about this.
Out and get back to digging!
Aye, aye, sir!
Where am I?
That's right. To make things even worse, it turns out that the health inspector isn't even dead. So they bury him alive, and if things literally could not get any worse, the cops show up. The gig is finally up, or that's what they thought, because it turns out they actually just randomly found him lost out there and wanted to give him a ride back home. So they agree, but then the worst thing that could have possibly happened happens, because the mud gets washed off of the body and it goes sliding down the hill right next to the cop car. So now they're left with no choice but to hide the body in the back of the cop car.
Captain, get away!
After that long, awkward car ride back home, where Mr. Krabs somehow made SpongeBob stay quiet, SpongeBob eventually sneaks out of the car back to the Krusty Krab, where he's tasked with getting the body in the back of the car while Mr. Krabs distracts him. But unfortunately for him, the back is locked. So SpongeBob somehow puts the body in his hat and sneaks it in.
Ahoy there, SpongeBob! I thought you were back, taking care of that shovel!
Well, the back door was locked, so I came around here.
While we go through a minute of SpongeBob struggling to get his hat in the bat, Mr. Krabs somehow manages to distract them for long enough to not know what they're doing. But finally, after everything seems good, Mr. Krabs offers them a drink, right as the cops are about to leave. But this was the worst mistake he could have made, because the officer wanted ice in her drink, and for some reason, she insists on going to the back to get ice.
Step aside. You people act like you've committed a murder.
Okay, I confess. SpongeBob killed him.
After blaming each other back and forth, with not many options, Mr. Krabs confesses that they killed him, and hid his body in the freezer. When they go back to check, he is nowhere to be seen.
Say, maybe he turned into a zombie and walked out.
Nah, turns out he just woke up. But that doesn't stop everyone from believing he's a zombie and beating him up even more. In this episode, we saw an attempted murder, corpse concealment, and full-on zombie paranoia. This really doesn't sound like your typical SpongeBob episode, and it's arguably one of the darkest ones in the entire show. But yeah, those were the 10 darkest SpongeBob episodes of all time. Let me know if you agree with these down below. And because you watched all the way to the end, you should click the subscribe button, because I just started this channel and I would love to cover anything and everything SpongeBob related for you guys.